Once upon a time, a man died and went to heaven. And when he got up there, he got to the pearly gates, and there's St. Peter sitting there behind the desk, and he was in line, and he comes up, and his turn in line, and St. Peter opens the book and comes to his name, and there's a red star by his name. And St. Peter says, "Oh, my, there's a red star by your name." And the fellow says, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well, it means that when you were on earth, you led an exemplary life, fabulous life. I mean, you were just a wonderful person. You never smoked, you never drank, you never swore. You're married to the same person forever. You never told a lie. You never chewed tobacco. You worked hard, diligently all your life, never missed a day of work. I mean, you just went to church all the time and everything else, gave to the poor. You're just a wonderful person, and you got a red star." He said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well, it means that you actually get a chance to decide where you want to spend eternity, up here or down there." And he said, "Ooh, why would I want to spend eternity down there? I've been hearing about down there all my life. It's what a terrible place it is." And he said, "Well, they get a lot of bad PR. And we've kind of encouraged that through our churches on earth. So, but they're not necessarily that bad." He said, "Well, really?" He said, "So you can stay here or there." He said, "Well, can I take a look at it?" He said, "Well, sure. What we'll do is we'll set you up with a tour, and you can go down and take a look at the other place, and then you take a look around here and see what you like." So he said, "How do I get there?" He said, "Well, you see that elevator over there? It's like a telephone booth." He said, "You just go in. There's two buttons. There's an H and H, and you just press the lower button, and it'll take you down there. And I'll tell St. Nick that you're on your way." So he went and got in the elevator and pushed the button, and this elevator went down, down, down through eternity, all the way through eternity, and finally opened, and there's St. Nick, the devil, and he's dressed in a beautiful tuxedo, and he has like a banquet captain or a maitre d', also dressed in a tuxedo. He said, "Please come in, let us show you around." And there's music, and goes in there, it's music and dancing and beautiful plants and restaurants and people having a wonderful time and laughing, and golf courses and swimming pools and beautiful girls all over the place. And you're thinking, wow. He said, "This isn't what they told me all my life. I mean, all my life I've been trying not to come here." He said, "This is what they told me." He said, "Well, we had this big breakup, some millions of years ago, and we got bad publicity ever since. But this is the way it is." So he went around and looked around, and he said, "This is really a neat place, and everybody's having a good time, and they're eating and drinking and making merry, and beautiful girls and wine and song." And he's thinking, wow, this is really neat. I mean, all his life he's avoided this. So he goes back and he said, "Well, thank you very much for the tour." And he said, "Well, whatever you decide to do is fine with us." He said, "Thank you." Got back in the elevator, pushed the upper H button. He goes up, 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 up through eternity, and he goes back to the front desk, and he said, "St. Peter," he said, "it's quite an interesting place." He said, "Yeah, they've got a lot of things going for them." He said, "May I look around heaven?" He said, "So I can compare." He said, "Sure, go ahead." So he went and he looked around heaven, and he looked, and he found that people were sitting on little clouds and playing harps and reading books of poetry, and there were lambs and in the meadows and flowers, and everything was kind of beautiful, and soft music was playing, and it looked very nice, except it was just a little bit boring compared to what was going on down there. And he started to think, I've led such a straight life all my life. I've never had any fun or anything else. He said, and all those people down there having such a great time, and this is so boring. This is what they told me I'd get if I died and went to heaven. So he started thinking. Doggone it. I'm going to go down to that other place. So he goes back to St. Peter, said, "St. Peter, I made my decision. I'm spend eternity in that other place." He said, "Fine." He said, "As long as you understand it's a one-time choice, you can't reverse your choice." He said, "No problem. I said, sign up. I'll tell him that you're coming." So he goes back in the elevator, pushes the bottom H button, and he can hardly wait. Oh boy, is he going to have some time. All his life he's watched people having a great time. Now he's going to have a great time. And finally it opens up, and there's St. Nick, and he's wearing leather, and he's got a hood and a mask, and he's got big burly arms, and he's got a whip and a chain, and he's got 2 or 3 people behind him, and they grab him and they pull him off the elevator, and they put chains on them, and they beat him, and people all around, people are screaming and hanging from walls and burning, and there's fire and brimstone and awful. And he says, wait, this isn't what you showed me when I came down here." He said, "Yes, but then you were a prospect. Now you're a customer. This is what the customers get." I know that doesn't apply to anything that you do, but there you have it. There you have it. All right. Well, I've spoken to people today who, in this audience, who are earning $25,000 a year. And I've also spoken to people in this audience who are earning $250,000 a year. And it's pretty hard to tell them from each other because they all look the same. And so we know that everybody here is earning somewhere in this range. So maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, and so on. Well, so my first question is, if somebody is earning 10 times as much as someone else, that's a 10 times difference, is it possible that this person is 10 times smarter than the person who's earning $25,000? Is it possible the person works 10 times as many hours, has 10 times as many years of education or experience, has 10 times the number of years of college, sees 10 times as many people, works 10 times as many days? Is it possible that this person is 10 times anything? And what is the answer? Of course not. Sometimes this person is just a tiny, tiny bit better. So let's call this person A, and this is person B. And we know that there's only very small differences, which we'll talk about in a couple of seconds. So my first question is, my first point is this, is to remember that everybody who is person B was at once person A. And then they did certain things that moved them along the road of life and got them to person B. We also know that everybody starts off with pretty much the same level of intelligence, ability, and opportunity. Nobody's any different from anyone else. Nobody's smarter than you, nobody's better than you, but people have done certain things that have gotten them from here to here. So that's the first thing. Now, my first question is this, is if you had a choice, if you could pick, like from a menu, and you could be person A or person B, which one would you choose to be? Which one would you choose to be? Thank you. That's very important that I ask this question. It's very important that you answer it, because the starting point, the turning point in your life is always when you make a decision. As I said before, make a decision to be person B. Make a decision to be one of the highest paid people in your field. Now, people don't understand this. I can just tell you I've studied it for hundreds of hours, is that when you make a decision, you bring about a chemical change in your body. You bring about a total change in your psyche. You become a different human being by the very act of making a decision. In fact, you can sit here and you can make a decision to do something different or better with your life. By gum, you're going to do it. And without moving, you already feel happier. Your brain releases endorphins. You feel more motivated. You feel more in control of your life from making a decision. But here's something else that I found, and it was when I told you that person told me that their top 20% of salespeople make 80% of the money. I decided to be in the top 20%. I learned later that it was a turning point in my life. Sometimes we go through turning points and we don't realize they were until later. It was a turning point because what I found is that everybody who gets into the top 20% or the top 10% decided to. And everybody who doesn't, by default, did not decide to. And people say, well, no, I always wanted to be in the top 20%. I always want to make a lot of money. Yes, but you never decided to. You wanted to, and you wished, and you hoped, and you prayed, and you lit candles, you know, for your favorite saint, but you never made a do or die decision that by gum, I'm going to be in the top 10 or 20%. I'm going to be one of the highest money earners in my field. And as a result, by default, you end up in the bottom 80%. You never meant to, but by not deciding to be in the top 20, you decided accidentally to be in the bottom 80. So, what I've asked you to do, and what you did, thank heavens, is you decided to be in the top 20%. You decided to be B. Now, the only question is, how do we get there? Because everybody who is a B was at once an A. And they did certain things in a certain way, and they're all learnable skills, and you can do them as well. So I've prepared a special seminar for you, and this special seminar is basically talking about three critical things. The winning edge concept of selling, why it is that some people are in the top 10%, and a specific formula you can use to get there. And also buying influences, what influences you can have on people that will cause them to buy very quickly and cause, so many people have asked me about how do I get my prospects off of, off the stage one, how do I get them to make a buying decision? And I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll talk about how you can use your time more effectively so that you can get 2 or 3 times the amount of results out of each day that you're getting today. So if we begin, you all have workbooks. Do you all have workbooks? It's very important. And the workbooks start with the winning edge concept. Now the winning edge concept, I'm going to see if I can do this. All right. Okay. The winning edge concept basically says that small differences in ability lead to large differences in results. Lead to large differences in results. You know, you've all heard the stories of the Olympic runners. Who won the gold medal in such and such an Olympic? Who won the silver? Who remembers anybody else? And you'll find that the winners in the Olympics often win by a tenth of a second, tenth of an inch, a fraction. Tiny, tiny difference, but the difference is extraordinary. So this concept, the winning edge concept, is something I learned many years ago. I found it's one of the most important thinking principles. It had a major effect on my life, and it's true in all businesses and in all personal lives, especially in sales. It says a horse that wins by a nose wins 10 times the prize money of a horse that comes in second by a nose. Now, if you look at a horse that wins by a nose, that's a nose in a photo finish. And that represents 10 times the prize money. The difference between a human being and a horse, however, is a human being, a salesperson, has a disadvantage. Because a horse can win, place, or show. It can come in the money one of three ways. But a human being, a salesperson, can only win once. It's a winner-take-all deal. Either you get the sale or you don't. When was the last time a customer called you over for honorable mention and said, look, we've decided to buy from someone else, but we wanted to give you a little prize just for your efforts? Yeah? It doesn't happen. We're in a winner-take-all field. And is the person who wins 10 times better than the person who comes in second? Is the company's product or service 10 times better, 10 times cheaper, 10 times more accomplished? No, it's just a tiny bit better. It's a small difference better. We say, is the horse that wins, B, is the horse that wins 10 times faster than the horse that loses. Salespeople who get the sale are usually only a little bit better than salespeople who lose the sale. It's all a matter of winning edges. It's very tiny differences in performance. And that's why we must be constantly trying to develop them. Well, in every sales organization, we say, there are some salespeople who earn 10 times as much as others. They are selling, we say they're selling the same product or service. And B, they're selling out of the same office with the same sales material. And C, we say they are selling at the same prices. And you can even say in the same competitive conditions and so on. In other words, same, and they earn 5 or 10 times as much. This is the eye-opener that I had when I was 23, 24, when I really got into professional selling, is some people were making vastly more than others selling the same product to the same people. So I began asking why. Why is it that some salespeople are more successful than others? I started off asking as a young man, coming from a poor background. I started off so far behind, I thought I was first. But coming from a poor background, I began to ask, why is it that some people are more successful than others? And then when I got into sales, why are some salespeople more successful than others? By the way, eventually I evolved out of sales because I learned the answers and applied them. And then I got into sales management. And then I began asking, why are some sales managers more successful than others? And then I got into management for large corporations. I say, why are some managers more successful? I started my own business. Why are some business owners more successful? And what I learned is that all the answers have been found. Is you don't have to invent any new answers. Every answer you could possibly want has been found, and found many times. Some years ago, I was studying success. It became my lifelong study. I came across some work by a gentleman who had spent more than 50 years studying success. He'd read thousands of books. He advised 6 presidents. And he had written 4 books, each of which had 250 success principles. And the 4 books together were 1,000 success principles. The books back in the 50s, 60s, 70s were published all over the world by the tens of millions. They sold more in China than the combined works of Mao Zedong, Lao Tzu, and Confucius. And so I'd read all of his stuff and everything, and I familiarized myself with it. Not 1,000 principles, but I listened to them all and read them all. And then one day I'm sitting in a cafe. This is the way it happens. Little cafe in Washington, D.C. It's kind of like a food court. And you pick up your food and you go and sit at a table. And I'm sitting there at a table for 4, and the place is very crowded. And an old gentleman with obviously his young assistant came by, and there was no place to sit. So I stood up and I said, would you like to join me? I've got lots of room at the table. He said, no, I wouldn't want to disturb you. I said, please join me, I've got lots of room. So he said, thank you. We sat down, and I introduced myself to him, and his name was Koppmeyer. He's dead now, but he was the one who'd written all these books that I had read. And so I said, I've read all your stuff. I mean, so very nice man, very gracious, about 89 years old at that time. And so as we began talking, I asked the question that you would ask. And the question would be, out of all these 1,000 success principles, what's the most important? And he smiled at me, sort of like a grandfather would smile at a grandson, as if he'd heard this question many times before. And he said, Brian, the most important success principle ever discovered is this. He said, learn from the experts. He said, learn from the experts. He said, you'll never live long enough, I remember those words, to figure it all out for yourself. I still remember, I can see him telling me this. You'll never live long enough to figure it all out for yourself. Learn from the experts. Learn from the people who've gone before you. They will save you years and years of hard work. And every successful person I've spoken to in this room is a person who makes it a life habit to learn from the experts. They're constantly reading and listening and attending their courses. They're just hungry like Pac-Man. They're just gobbling up material from the experts. And as a result, they're just saving themselves years of work in trying to figure out the same things by themselves.